Hi gardening gardeners. I'm going to do a short video today about thinning out your seedlings and about succession planting. So you can see in this little pot here that I have scattered a bunch of little lettuce seeds which are popping up, and they're all in a big clump. And of course they're not going to grow super well if they are crowded together like this and they're crowding each other out. So how you thin out seedlings depends a little bit on whether you've got them in a pot or whether you already have them directly in the ground, but there's a couple of different things you can do. Either you can just pull out all of the smaller, weaker, spindlier seedlings and chuck them and get rid of them and just keep the strongest ones, which I always feel bad doing. Or you can very gently pull a portion of the seedlings and repot them more spaced out, either in a bigger pot or in the ground. Or you can actually let them grow fairly crowded in until they are a couple inches high, and then you can create space by thinning out some of the little in-between plants for microgreens for salads. So if you were to leave these to grow for a couple inches high, for example, you could then just yank half of them out and have them for a salad, and the little plants that were still left in your pot could be the ones that you allow to grow into full mature adult lettuce. So you have a couple of different options for thinning things out. When it comes to direct planting things in the ground, I'm using a pot here, which I know is kind of confusing, but it's raining and I don't want to wreck my phone outside. So you can either be really diligent when you're direct sowing in the ground and make sure that your seeds are very carefully spaced out, as much as they need to be spaced out right from the get-go, which requires a lot of patience, especially for things like lettuce that have really tiny seeds. Or you can be a lazy bones like me and you can get a whole pinch of lettuce seeds and just sprinkle them, knowing that some will get eaten by birds and some won't come up, and the ones that do come up you can thin out, as I suggested with the potted ones, either by pulling up and chucking the weaker plants or by letting them grow a couple inches and then harvesting a whole pile of them for microgreens for a salad. So those are your 2, 3, however many options for thinning out your seedlings. Couple of tips for thinning them out. It's easier if the soil's damp. If the soil's really dry, then you risk ripping the delicate little roots or pulling up more of the ground than you intend to. So make sure you dampen your soil before you start thinning things out. It's gentlest on the plant if you do the thinning out or the transplanting in the evening. The reason for that is that immediately after you do the thinning and transplanting, the little seedlings are not then suddenly exposed to lots of heat and sunlight, so it's lower stress for them if you do it in the evening and they sort of have overnight to recover. A general rule of thumb you want to keep in mind is, like, think about how big the mature plant is going to be and then add a couple of inches when you're thinking about how to space things out. So if you're planting a lettuce plant and you think it's going to be this big when it's mature and fully grown, and when you're planting your lettuce starts in the garden, you want to make sure that you're leaving this much space between lettuce plants so that they have room to grow to their full potential. Otherwise, if they're overcrowded, they might not grow so big. So a couple notes on spacing as you're thinning things out. Just a couple of common things. You can look up how spaced out different things need to be, or you can sort of make your best guess based on how big you think things will grow. But beets generally need to be at least 3 inches apart. Some people say 6 inches apart. I think that's a bit much. I usually do closer to 3-4 inches apart. Carrots need to be more like 2 or 3 inches apart. You can plant them closer together if you want to harvest little tiny baby carrots, but if you want mature carrots, I'd do 3 inches apart. Lettuce, you actually want to be like 12-18 inches apart if you really want it to like grow to its full potential. Radishes, similar to carrots, just 2 or 3 inches apart. It varies from plant to plant, and if you're mixing things up and interplanting, then that totally changes the game too, but use your best judgment. Don't be afraid to overplant seeds and seedlings, knowing that some of them might not make it, and that some of them may need to be pulled or harvested when they're just little babies. Yeah, you'll kind of get a feel for it. So one other quick thing, two other quick things I wanted to talk about. One is around root vegetables. So if you think about things like carrots and beets, they are really fussy. If you start them in little tiny pots and then transplant them into bigger pots and then eventually put them in the ground, the more you disrupt their roots when they're really small, the more likely they are to throw up their hands and say, F it, I'm done. Sometimes if the soil gets jostled too much when the roots are forming, you might see your carrots and things splitting into pieces rather than growing one like nice robust carrot. So when it comes to root veggies, I tend to direct sow them right in my garden where I plan for them to grow to maturity and thin them out from there rather than starting them in little pots. And beyond the note about root veggies, I wanted to talk a little bit about succession planting. So I have some pea plants that I started in pots a few weeks ago and they've been growing in my greenhouse. I have potted some of them outside now in my garden. And for those of you who don't know what succession planting is, that's when you plant more of the same seeds in the same general place 3 or 4 weeks apart so that you have continuous harvests of things. So for things that grow fairly quickly, things like kale, lettuce, greens, peas, carrots are another one, radishes, you can plant your first round and then 3 or 4 weeks later plant another round close by, and that means that you have like a continuous supply of stuff that's ready. You're not finding yourself in a situation where you have like 10,000 beets all of a sudden or 10,000 radishes all at once and that's your whole crop for the season. So you can see here where I have, let's see if I can do this without dropping my phone, where I've planted some pea plants along here. So these have got like probably about a 3-4 week head start on any brand new seeds right now. Started them in the greenhouse, planted them here, they're growing really nicely. So what I'm going to do is just take some more pea seeds and I'm just going to plunk them right in the dirt here in between these plants, so that in a few weeks there will be some new little pea shoots coming up, and a few weeks after that maybe I'll plant another round, and that means there's just going to be a continuous supply of peas growing up that little trellis. So that's like in a nutshell what succession planting is. You can do it with lots of different things in your garden. So if you have a seed packet and you've planted a portion of a particular type of seed, think about not planting at all. Think about saving some more to plant a few weeks down the line. Yeah, this is a really long video and really rambly, but hopefully it was useful. And as always, let me know if you have any more questions or topics you want me to explore in videos, questions and things you want me to troubleshoot. I'm here and I support you. You're all doing amazing. Thanks, Granny Gardeners.